What's up everyone, how's it going? So to be perfectly honest, this is a video that I really hesitated in making. This is because I am a coach, I am an online personal trainer, and so I make a living by writing training plans and by coaching people. So for me to put out this kind of free information, it is certainly plausible that someone might take this information, make their own training plan, whereas otherwise they might come to me for help, for advice that I could charge for. So I think it's possible that in the short term, this type of video might hurt me financially. And this is a big part of the reason why you don't see that much of this content. You don't see a lot of discussion around training splits, around the actual making of a training plan. A lot of these fitness influencers, they are selling training plans, usually cookie cutter plans, sometimes custom plans like me, and they realize that they don't want to put this information out there because it could hurt them financially. So why am I doing this? Am I just a bad marketer? Am I bad at finance? Am I a bad influencer? Well, yes, but also there's some other reasons. First, I think putting this information out there can sort of separate my channel and separate my brand from other brands. So if I am putting this information out there, it can help to grow my channel, to grow my presence. Also, because I have more presence, people might buy my book. They might invest in a plan which could be better than just whatever they make up. And most importantly, I think it's just the concept of karma. It's never a bad thing to do good things. By helping more people, that's my main goal. Okay, that's why I'm doing all this. I'm not doing this for money. If I was doing this for money, I would be going about this in a completely different way. And that's not really my goal. It's one of them, but it's a pretty minor goal compared to most people. All right, with all of that out of the way, let's get into what is an upper-lower split, the advantages, the disadvantages, how to set it up, some important considerations for volume, frequency, intensity, RPE, etc. So obviously based on the name, you know that it has upper body on some days, lower body on other days. The typical way to set it up is 2 upper body days and 2 lower body days with 3 days off. However, some people set it up where it's upper, lower, upper, lower, upper, so you have 3 upper days and 2 lower days. Still, other ambitious folks, they set it up where it's 6 days per week, so 3 upper, 3 lower, alternating. I think if you're a beginner, or if you have trouble recovering, just 2 upper and 2 lower is completely fine. You have 3 days off to recover, and you can really make excellent progress with just this frequency. All right, so let's get into a lower body workout, what that might look like, how to set it up for maximum progress, assuming that you are interested in a little bit of strength and a little bit of size, hypertrophy. Generally in my videos, I assume that most people, they want a sort of mixture of both of those because that's typically what most people want. If you are only interested in size or only interested in strength, your training might change slightly. So typically I will have 1 to 2 hinge exercises, 1 to 2 squat exercises, some kind of unilateral movement, like a Bulgarian split squat, a lunge, a one-leg Romanian deadlift, that kind of thing. Some kind of curling movement with the hamstrings, so a seated hamstring curl, a lying hamstring curl, something on a ball, a body weight movement, that kind of thing. And I will finish it up sometimes with 1 calf movement. So it could be seated, could be standing, could be a machine, that kind of thing. So let's get into hinging movements. The king of hinging movements is going to be something like a deadlift, either a sumo deadlift as shown here, or some kind of variation. So I might use a paused sumo deadlift to help me keep position off of the floor. I might use a sumo rack pull where the bar is a little bit higher. I might use a deficit pull, so where I'm standing on plates and the range of motion is a bit longer. I might do a conventional pull where my legs are together. I might do a deficit deadlift, again, where I'm standing on plates to increase the range of motion that my hips need to pull through, that my back needs to pull through. I might do a rack pull, where again, the bar is elevated. This allows me to use more weight and to really overload the grip as well as the traps and spinal erectors. I might use a snatch grip deficit deadlift if I really want maximum range of motion, because when your arms are wider, it increases the range of motion even more. I might do a Romanian deadlift where it's performed floating during the set. So it doesn't really reach the ground. It's on the ground, you lift it up, and then you are lowering it to within a few inches of the ground, but you're not quite touching the ground. So you are basically sitting back, and you're not isolating the hamstrings because a lot of other muscles are still working, but you're focusing more on the hamstrings, and you're focusing on that hinging movement pattern and keeping your torso in a very strict position. You could also do something like a back extension. This is actually going to be a very nice complement to the deadlift. The deadlift compresses the spine, whereas the back extension, it actually opens up the spine. It decompresses the spine, which is great for recovery. So if you have a second hinge movement, I wouldn't do a second deadlift. I would stick to a back extension. It's going to be much, much easier to recover. You can also do a glute bridge or a hip thrust. Again, this is going to put less stress on the spine, and it's going to make it easier to recover. Plus, this works a little bit different of a movement pattern. You're more focused on the glutes rather than the hamstrings. You could also do a good morning or a pin good morning. So either a free weight exercise or one that is resting on pins in a power rack. Both are going to be really good movements. So whatever movement you pick, I would do 3 to 6 sets of maybe 5 to 10 reps. I think that's a good amount that most people can recover from fairly easily. However, it's important to keep in mind that the hamstrings, they don't just extend the hip in a hinging movement. They also flex the knee, as shown here. So you're going to want to have some kind of curling movement. Actually, part of the hamstring, it doesn't even cross the hip. It only flexes the knee. So you're going to want to actually have some kind of isolation movement in order to get full development. So it could be a seated one, it could be a lying one, it could be a ball, whatever. They're all okay. You're also going to want to have some kind of core movement to warm up. I prefer a Palov press. This really helps to activate the core, which is important before you're doing any kind of spinal loading movement. So a Palov press is one of the best options. But most ab exercises are going to be a good warm-up. Even something like a plank or a side plank with leg raise, those are all going to be good. You really want to get blood in the abdominals, especially the lower abs, to really protect that lower back. I am a round-backed puller, okay? So I know I'm going to get comments about this. My upper back is generally fairly rounded when I deadlift. And it's important to have strong abs if you deadlift like this. You are also going to want to have some kind of squat. This is going to be much more effective for the quads especially, and is another good way to build up the adductors and the glutes. Here I'm using a backpack because my gym still doesn't have a free squat, and so this is the only way to really load up the movement. This isn't a real exercise. I wouldn't really advise this if you have a free weight, squat machine. Where you can do free weight squats. This is just something that I'm doing because I don't really have a choice. In terms of squat variations, I will usually do high bar back squat, which is going to help keep you very upright. As you can see, I put plates beneath my heels, which again keeps you more upright. Usually this backpack is sort of messing with my balance, but usually you should stay quite upright and try to focus on the quads because that's the muscle that you're trying to develop. I will also use front squats fairly regularly, which you can keep even more upright. So when you're doing a front squat, you can stay almost perfectly vertical, which again puts a lot of stress on the quads, which is what you are trying to develop. Some people prefer a low bar position where you are more bent over. This is going to be a bit more hips, a bit more hamstrings. I don't particularly like this variation personally, but other people do. So you really need to find which squat variation that you prefer. Again, this video is not a set plan. This is not going to tell you exactly how many sets or how many reps or which exercises, simply because I don't know you, okay? Unless you're my client already, I don't have your personal information, so I can't really give you specific recommendations. So usually the best course of action is just to buy my book, try a bunch of different exercises, and see which ones are suitable for you. Other squat variations that I do are going to be a box squat. So this is where you're squatting down to a bench instead of a completely free movement. Now, this isn't like a machine movement. You still have to control the bar, control your body, but it is a little bit easier to recover from, and it does allow you to overload the body in quite a nice way. I find that I can use significantly more weight with a box squat. Again, this is going to depend on the height of the box. If the box is very low, you won't be able to use a ton of weight. But if the box is in like a quarter squat or a half squat position, you should be able to use far in excess of your normal squatting weights. And the wind just blew my camera over. As you can see, it's very windy here, which makes it even more challenging. Another variation that I really like are Anderson squats. So this is when you're not starting from the top position, squatting down and then squatting back up. You are actually starting from the bottom position. So these are named after Paul Anderson, the legendary strength athlete. What he used to do, he used to go to his backyard, he put these big barrels with a bar between them, and he dug a hole in between the barrels. So he would go in there, and he would do like a quarter squat. So he would get in there, in the hole, quarter squat the weights up, back down, up and down for reps. Then he would start to fill in the hole with dirt. So basically this is an interesting way to progress because he is starting from a lower position each week, increasing the range of motion. So starting in the very bottom position is very challenging, and I would definitely recommend trying this out. However, you don't have to dig up your backyard. You don't even have to have a backyard. All you need is a power rack, and you can set the pins to whatever position you want. You can do a quarter squat, you can do a half squat, you can do a squat from parallel, or you can even start in that ATG position if you really want a challenge. You could also do a goblet squat. So this is a bit of a lighter variation, usually done for higher reps, where you hold a dumbbell, and it's almost like a front squat, except you're using a dumbbell. And I find this is one of the best variations to teach beginners how to squat. I've had beginners that, they tried to back squat, and it just looked horrible, absolutely painful, terrible. But when I give them a dumbbell, and they're using it in that goblet front squat position, all of a sudden, their squat looks beautiful. It looks wonderful because it's changing their position and forcing them into a more upright stance. And with all of these movements, except for Anderson squats, you can use a pause as well. So you can pause in that bottom position, which makes the exercise quite a bit more challenging. Most people can only pause squat roughly 85 to maybe 90% of their top squat because you're not getting that bounce out of that bottom position. You're not getting that stretch reflex, which helps you to squat more weight. For squatting, you can use a variety of rep ranges. I would say anywhere from 5 to 15, maybe even 20 reps will be appropriate for hypertrophy. If I had to pick one narrow rep range for most people, I would say 8 to 12 is going to be the most sort of bang for your buck in terms of hypertrophy. In terms of strength, maybe a little bit lower, like the sort of 3 to 8 rep range. I wouldn't max out all the time. You don't really get a lot of bang for your buck from that. In terms of volume, the number of sets per session, I would say anywhere from 5 to maybe 8 sets would be appropriate. The squat is a big movement. It takes a lot out of you, and it's very easy to overdo it. I'm not going to say like overtraining, but this is one movement pattern where you do need to be aware that it's possible to overdo it. Also keep in mind that in this footage I discussed hinging first, but in the actual workout I think it makes more sense to squat before you deadlift. If you deadlift before you squat, your lower back is going to be very tired. Squatting with a tired lower back is horrible. Even just unracking the weight is pretty miserable. However, if you squat before you deadlift, your legs are going to be tired. Deadlifting with tired legs, yeah, you might need to reduce the weight, but there's really no safety concerns, no safety issues with that. You just reduce the weight, you might feel a little bit less explosive, but your technique shouldn't be affected too much as long as you adjust the weights. You can also work in something like a leg press. I think this is going to be a good option. Personally, I don't like these as much as squats. I feel squats much more strongly where I'm supposed to feel them. But again, if you prefer to leg press, there's nothing inherently wrong with doing a leg press, and you can get pretty good results from this. I would say if you're trying to do a hinge and a squat in the same workout, one of those needs to be an easier variation. So I wouldn't do like a competition squat and a competition deadlift for huge amounts of weight in the same workout. It's just going to be too much to recover from. So you might do like a competition style squat and then also a back extension or a hip thrust, something that doesn't load the spine as heavily. Furthermore, I think it's important for every workout, or at least most workouts, to have some kind of unilateral lower body movement. So something like a lunge, which you can see me doing here, a Bulgarian split squat, or a one-leg Romanian deadlift. These are all going to work the glute medius, which is an absolutely essential muscle which you don't hear that much about. You hear a lot about its cousin, the glute maximus, which is responsible for extending the hip and is important for explosive power, for athleticism. If you want to run fast, jump high, glute maximus is crucial. However, the glute medius, it stabilizes the hip, which is very, very important for preventing injury. If you have a weak glute medius, your knee might get injured because your knee might collapse inwards. Your Achilles tendon might also get injured because you're twisting at that joint, because you're compensating. Your toes might get injured even. You might get foot problems. You might get hip problems. You might get back problems. If you have a weak glute medius, it is only a matter of time before you get injured. And doing single leg exercises is the best way to fix that. All right, moving on to upper body. So for upper body, this is going to be mostly pushing exercises, so variants of bench pressing, dips, etc. It's going to be pulling exercises, so vertical pulls, pull-ups, pull-downs, that kind of thing. Pressing exercises, where you're doing some kind of vertical press, like a standing overhead press, dumbbells, Klokov press, that kind of thing. And it's also going to be rows, so a horizontal row, either a chest-supported row or a barbell bent-over row, that kind of thing. So I think the best way to set it up would be where you have 1 to 2 exercises for each movement pattern, and you alternate between these. So when you are doing a push or a press exercise, when you are done with that, you can go do a pull or a row exercise. And you shouldn't really be fatigued from doing this. This is because they work completely opposite muscles. So when you're rowing or pulling, that's going to work your back, your biceps, your forearms. When you are pushing or pressing, it's going to work your triceps, your chest, your anterior deltoids, the front of your shoulder, that kind of thing. So because these don't really overlap in terms of muscles, so you shouldn't really have recovery issues from alternating between these exercises. As you can see, it's crazy windy here. So in terms of pushing exercises, here I'm doing an incline bench press with a barbell, which is a great variation. You can also use dumbbells. You can also do it on the flat. You can also do it on a decline. Those are all going to be really good variations with both barbells and dumbbells. You can also do these with a pause. So by pausing each rep, it's just another variation that you can use to progress. You can also do dips, which if you have no gym is a very, very good option. One variation that I really like is a reverse grip press. So this is exactly what it sounds. Instead of grabbing the barbell with an overhand grip, you're actually using an underhand grip. I know this looks really weird, it looks dangerous, but it's completely fine actually, as long as you build up slowly, and you might want to do it in a power rack if you're using heavy weight. For pulling exercises, vertical pulls, you can do neutral grip pull downs as shown. You can use an overhand wide grip, which is going to work the teres major a little bit more. You can, of course, do pull-ups with an overhand grip, neutral grip pull-ups, which is one of my favorites. You can use an underhand narrower grip, also known as a chin-up. And for all of these, you can either use an assisted machine or you can add weight if you are a strong mofo. Finally, you can pause all of these if you want. You can pause in the bottom position, you can pause midway, just to add another variation. In terms of pressing exercises, vertical pushes essentially, The classic would be the standing barbell overhead press. It's strict, no leg drive. Another option is going to be dumbbells. So you can do these seated or standing. I prefer seated just because, you can feel a little bit more stable, but both are okay. You could do these in a Smith machine if you really want. I don't personally prefer these, but some people do, so it's worth mentioning. You could do a push press where you use leg drive to sort of thrust the bar overhead, meaning you can use more weight and overload the shoulders and traps a little bit more. My personal favorite would be the Z press, where you're sitting on your butt with your legs out in front of you and you're pushing from pins. You can get really strong with this variation. It's easier on the lower back and it works the core in a very, very different way. In terms of rowing exercises, I would choose a barbell bent over row, a pendlay row, which is going to be another variation. You could do a cable row or some kind of machine row, also going to be safer on the lower back. You could do a T-bar row, which is using that neutral grip, which is a lot easier on the joints. So the way to set this up would be if you're doing an upper body workout, I would choose 1 to 2 exercises per movement pattern and then alternate between them. So you're doing like a set of push, then a set of pull, then push, then pull. It's not a superset, take plenty of recovery time, but you're just alternating between this in order to save time. In terms of sets, the overall volume, well, this is going to be pretty personal. Again, I don't know you, so it's going to be very hard for me to give specific recommendations. But I would say 3 to 5 sets per exercise is going to be plenty. If you're a beginner, you might not even need that much. Even just 1 to 2 could be plenty if it's a good quality effort. After all of those compound movements are finished, then I would typically recommend doing some isolation movements. This isn't going to be like the bulk, no pun intended, of your workout. It's just something to sort of add on to the end. So maybe it's like 20 or 30% of the workout. So for chest isolation, you might want to do something like a fly with dumbbells, a fly with cables, or some kind of pec deck machine. For triceps isolation, some kind of extension, so an overhead dumbbell extension, a cable extension, some kind of machine extension, anything where you are only extending at the elbow in order to fully isolate the triceps. For biceps, there's a variety of curling exercises that you can choose, either a standing barbell curl, which isn't a true isolation movement, but it is close enough to where it's basically isolating the bicep. You could do a preacher curl, which is going to be even more isolation-y. You could do dumbbells. There's a variety of curling movements that you can choose. For shoulder isolation, something like a lateral raise, a machine lateral raise, cable lateral raise, seated lateral raise, rear delt raises, anything where you're typically using dumbbells or cables and you are not using the triceps. So you're just trying to isolate various parts of the shoulder. I will typically do this part of my workout for higher reps. So all of these exercises I just listed, they might be like 10, 15, 20 reps, just because they're not really suitable to do for 5 reps or 3 reps or 1 rep. It's too easy to get injured and it doesn't really make sense at all. So basically I just do these in a circuit, and where you do like chest isolation, tricep, then bicep, then shoulders, and then you just go back and forth between these with maybe 30 seconds rest, a minute rest, a minute and a half rest. Nothing specific, just go by feel. It's not a superset, just make sure you're recovered. But again, these are isolation, so cardio should not be a limiting factor. And for these, I might do, 2 to 3 sets per exercise. And after the compound movements, that is plenty of volume. This is really just to, put the icing on that cake that is your physique. One important consideration is that if you're doing 5 days per week or 6 days per week, so if you're doing upper, lower, upper, lower, upper, lower, and working out 6 days per week, you are not going to be able to do the same exact workout every time. This is simply because you're going to be fatigued from the previous workout. So if you do a bunch of like front squats on Monday, by Wednesday, you're probably not recovered, to be perfectly honest. And so you might need to modify the movements to where you are adjusting your volume and adjusting your exercises in a way that promotes recovery. So how do you actually set this up? Well, if you're doing 3 lower body days per week, you might have one day that is glute focused, one day that is quad focused, and one day that is hamstring focused. You're still hitting your entire lower body every day, but on each workout, the focus changes. And this can help to improve your recovery and make sure you go into every workout fresh. If you're trying to hit your quads really hard 3 days per week, for most people that won't be sustainable. You just can't really recover that fast. Same thing for hamstrings, even more so. And same thing for glutes. You really do want to alternate the focus of your workouts so that you can just recover better and keep progressing. For upper body, you might want to have one workout that is more back focused, one workout that is more chest focused, and one workout that is more shoulder focused. You might also want to throw in the occasional workout where it's more arm focused. So you're shifting the emphasis of every workout. You're still working your entire upper body. This isn't just like an arm day or a chest day. That's just a bro split. But you are changing the emphasis slightly with every workout, again, to make sure that you are fully recovered. Most people can't do like a full-on chest workout 3 days per week. So what are the advantages of an upper-lower split? Well, I'm glad you asked. The advantages, one would be that you can use plenty of frequency. So unlike a bro split, where you're just working one muscle once per week, you're getting at least twice per week frequency. A big advantage compared to full body workouts is that you can focus on the mind-muscle connection. If you're doing a full body workout, you can't really focus on your shoulders or your biceps or your legs just because you're working everything in the workout and you can't really get in enough volume to establish a mind-muscle connection, to establish a pump, to establish just a feeling and a connection with that area. However, with upper-lower, if you're just working upper, this can actually be doable. Or if you're just working lower, this can definitely be doable because you're getting all that blood and all that neural drive towards that one area. It's a big area, but just by splitting it up in half, this can improve the quality of your workout. What about disadvantages? Well, there aren't really that many disadvantages. This is a tried and true split for a reason, and is one of the most popular because it works. The only real disadvantage, I would say, is that often the lower body will take longer to recover. So you might be in a situation where your upper body feels completely fine, but your lower body is still trashed from the previous workout. So this is where maybe adjusting the split a little bit to give yourself a little bit more recovery time for the lower body could be a good decision. All right, that is it for today. Make sure to hit me up if you want a custom plan. They are very affordable. Hopefully I haven't doomed myself financially by putting this information out there. But even if I have, that's cool too. Stay safe wherever you are. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And I will see you next time. Peace.